Joshua, we're still in chapter number 2. Recall that we've seen where Rahab has met the spies, and we're going to look at that in particular, but she's met the spies and the king has requested she turn them over to him. Now what would have happened if she had turned them over? Right, a spy has a very short lifespan. Okay, back then especially, they just chop off your heads, all right, or put you in dungeon for the rest of your life. But they dealt with you sharply, swiftly, and harshly. And thus, Rahab, though, God had already tenderized her heart and made her one of his children. And we'll show you that tonight and how God did that. But I want you to see that from verse number 6 all the way down to the end of this chapter, you'll see how Rahab has faith in God. How Rahab has faith in God. Now you stop and think about providence. Remember, I've often told you how providence usually works on both ends. Like when we're going to, the Holy Spirit moves us to go talk to somebody in particular, say, go talk to so-and-so and give them this verse or whatever. All right? And guess what God's doing on the other end? He's working on that heart, softening it up, quickening it, that it might be made alive unto salvation. So God's providence often is working on both ends, and that's exactly what we see here. When Joshua sent those 2 spies out, he doesn't know it, but providence is using his decisions and the spies' decisions to see Rahab and to get Rahab protection during the destruction of Jericho, because she is one of God's elect. And we know that because why? He took care of her. He watched over her. He protected her. But also, we'll read in this how God has melted the hearts of the people around in fear, but she wasn't afraid. Notice she has boldness. She has faith already to hide these men and knows that it was of God to hide them, to protect them, and to send them on their way. And you'll see the negotiation that comes out of that and how that the spies make a promise with her, a commitment with her. They make a covenant or a contract with her. So Joshua didn't really know that he was being divinely led and directed, and we usually don't. But when God's telling us to do something, what should we do? We should do it, right? If God's directing our hearts, and he knows how, if he's directing our hearts to do something, then know that it has providence in action all the way through on both ends. So this harlot, Joshua doesn't know that this harlot is going to be this person in the adopted state of Israel. He doesn't know that, but when he sends those 2 spies, and they don't know it either, but God knows it. And God knows that she needs to be protected because she's one of his elect. All right? There's one of God's elect residing in that city, and none of his sheep shall perish. Not one of his sheep will be lost. And remember that phrase from Jesus? Not one of his sheep shall be lost. She won't be lost. She's made a profession of faith to God, and she's made this commitment, and you will read about that in a minute over in Hebrews chapter 11. She's mentioned in the Hall of Faith chapter. She's mentioned in the Hall of Faith chapter. So what does that tell you about her? Right. She has faith in God. She's saved. And she does something in spite of severe oppression or severe danger to her own life as well as the 2 spies. Even her family could face severe consequences for her hiding those 2 spies. So she was taking a chance, wasn't she? A big chance. But she was trusting by faith in God to work it out. And that's what we'll see here in this. She was the vessel of mercy, and these spies were led right to her to make the arrangements for her protection. And then there's a phrase let's just go ahead and read. I'll go ahead and read Hebrews 11:31 to you. Hebrews 11:31. Here's her listing in the Hall of Faith. By faith, the harlot Rahab perished not with them that believed not, when she had received the spies. How? She had peace in her heart, didn't she? Right. Peace, true peace, the source is of God. So she had peace. When those two spies came, she already knew. God had already revealed to her what she needed to do. And by faith, she took action according to God's word. So here we see that she wasn't to perish with those that did perish. God was intervening providentially and bringing to her salvation, even though all around her, the whole city would be what? Destroyed. The whole city would be destroyed except for her house there on that one place wall where that scarlet thread was hanging. Her and whoever was in those walls of that house, her family or whoever, they were safe as long as they were in that place. Now if they actually went out and said, I don't believe it, went out, what would happen? They get killed in the battle. Okay, so here now she has this, the idea here is that this must needs be so. When you think about it, there was a needs be why those two spies should visit Jericho and converse with Ahab. So it wasn't just because Joshua needed a couple spies for the military aspect of it. He didn't know he needed those two spies to go and to help protect this one person or these persons in her household from this destruction that was coming. God was preserving Rahab while Rahab was trying to preserve the two spies, but God was preserving them too. He kept them from being detected. He kept them safe while the captain of the guard was looking for them. And then she hid them and told them what to do. Said, you flee to the mountains and stay there for a few days. She said 3 days. And then you can go back to where you came from, okay, across the Jordan. So she not only hid them, but she also gave them guidance on the best approach to getting back to Joshua. All right. So I want to read these verses, and then I want to show you an interesting parallel here with this providence of God before us dealing with Rahab. Verse 6 says, but she had brought them up to the roof of the house and hid them with the stalks of flax, which she had laid in order upon the roof. Now she was drying out her flax. All right, what do you do with flax? Yeah, you start making wool. All right, so you spin it. And now notice it says she had them laid out there. And then it says, but she had brought them up to the roof and hid them. And the men, verse 7, pursued after them the way to Jordan unto the fords. And as soon as they which pursued after them were gone out, they shut the gate. So the spies couldn't get out the gate again, could they? The pursuers, she told them they've probably gone back to the tents or the camp. So you need to follow them right down to the Jordan, and that's exactly where the pursuers went. So she misdirected them as well. All right? So we see that these pursuers are hot on the trail, they think, of these two spies. And it said in verse number 8, and before they were laid down, she came up unto them upon the roof. And she said unto the men, I know that the Lord, capital Lord, see that? So she's already using Jehovah's name, hath given you the land, and that your terror is fallen upon us, and that all the inhabitants of the land faint because of you. For we have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea for you, when you came out of Egypt, and what ye did unto the two kings of the Amorites that were on the other side, Jordan, Sihon, and Og, whom ye what? So what she's saying is the whole land is afraid. Guess who's given that fear to the inhabitants of Canaan land? God is. All right? And it was God doing the fighting. It was God doing the destroying. Israel, usually as the army, was just doing mop-up when they got through with the battle. So they utterly destroyed them. Now she said, verse 12, Now therefore, I pray you, swear unto me by who? The Lord, since I have showed you kindness, that ye will also show kindness unto my father's house, and give me a true token. In other words, I want a contract, and I want a written guarantee, or a guarantee of some type, that you will preserve my father's house and me. All right? And that ye will save alive my father, and my mother, and my brethren, and my sisters, and all that they have, and deliver our lives from death. All right? So who's she interceding for? Her whole family. Father, mother, sister, brothers. Okay? Her whole family. Now here's what the two spies say, verse 14. And the men answered her, Our life for yours. What that mean?
She took care of them, I take care of her.
Exactly. They're putting their lives on the line saying, we will protect you and your family. It said, Our lives for yours, if ye utter not this our business, and it shall be when the Lord hath given us the land, that we will deal kindly and truly with thee. So they make a commitment, don't they? Okay? She said, if you don't reveal our business, where we went and how we went, then we will honor that promise and we'll stake our lives on that promise. Now that's saying something, isn't it? Okay? Because those two spies knows a battle's coming. And they know there's going to be some destruction. They know there's going to be some warfare, and they'll be hard-pressed to protect these people unless God intervenes, and that's what she's asking. Before the Lord, promise that you're going to protect us, and these two spies say, our lives for yours. All right? So it says, verse 15, Then she let them down by a cord through the window, for her house was upon the town wall, and she dwelt upon the wall. So see, she has a place providentially arranged next to the wall. Her house is attached to that wall. And she can let these two spies out by a rope or a thread, it says. Okay? It said, Then she let them down by a cord through the window, for her house was upon the town wall. Verse 16, And she said unto them, Get you to the mountain, lest the pursuers meet you, and hide yourselves there 3 days, until the pursuers be returned, and afterward may ye go your way. So she's giving them advice, strategic advice. All right? And the men said unto her, We will be blameless of this thine oath, which thou hast made us swear. Behold, when we come into the land, thou shalt bind this line of scarlet thread, where? Which thou didst let us down by. In other words, this is where we come out of your window. You put this scarlet thread in your window so that it can be seen from outside. All right? And thou shalt bring thy father and thy mother and thy brethren and all thy father's household home unto thee. And what's he saying? Get them all in your house. Right there where that window is having that thread hanging from it, that's where you have your whole family. Okay, it's the only way the spies can ensure that they're all gathered up and they can be protected in one spot because of that one scarlet thread. And it shall be that whosoever shall go out the doors of thy house into the street, his blood shall be what? So you're crazy if you go outside, is what they're saying. He'll die if you go outside once this battle starts. Stay inside the house. Well, that makes sense, right? and we will be guiltless. And whosoever shall be with thee in the house, his blood shall be what? If any hand be upon him. And if thou utter this our business, then we will be quit of thine oath, which thou hast made us swear. All right? So that's fair, right? Said if you tell what's going to happen, it's done. No contract, no covenant, no promises, nothing. No protection. All right? And it says, and she said, according unto your words, so be it. And she sent them away, and they departed, and she bound the scarlet line in the window. Now look at that. They said for her to do it, and what'd she do? She hung that in the window by faith, knowing that God would protect her in the heat of that battle. And I'm saying something, you stop and think about the old battles. I mean, remember what happened to Jericho? It was completely destroyed. Remember the horn? The walls came what? Tumbling down. So the whole city would be destroyed, and to protect that one house, that one scarlet thread had to protect that house, and did so. You think about that, that's God's providence arranging things to where they could protect Rahab and her family. And they went and came into the mountain and abode there 3 days until the pursuers were returned. And the pursuers sought them throughout all the way, but found them not. That's providence again too. They were hot after them. They thought they would have them at the Jordan River, but no, they didn't get them. Then they came back and they were still looking for them. But they managed to hide out in the mountain and then quickly escape across and back to the camp. So the 2 men returned and descended from the mountain and passed over and came to Joshua the son of Nun and told him all things that befell them. And they said unto Joshua, look at this, truly the Lord hath delivered into our hands all the land. For even all the inhabitants of the country do faint because of us. So what do? They report what Rahab had told them. And the Lord's given us this land. Now remember, the last time they sent 12 spies out, what happened? Right. Only Joshua and Caleb came back with a good report. The other 10, what'd they say? Said, oh no, we can't go across there. No, there's giants in the land. They'd be more fierce than us. God's brought us over here to kill us. No, we ain't going. So then they changed their minds after Moses rebuked them and said, you better not go, because God said no. So out in the wilderness they went for how long? 40 years. Now Joshua's back. All that generation's passed away, save Caleb and him. And now they're getting ready to cross Jordan, take care of business. First place, first stop, Jericho. All right? Now they've been given the insight of how God's dealing with this people, these peoples of this land. God's already put fear into them. It says the hearts are ready to faint. In other words, they're almost ready to give up now, because they know about the great power of God leading them along this path to come and occupy this land. So we want to get back to Rahab now. And I want you to see there's a needs be why those 2 spies went to Jericho and conversed with Rahab. It wasn't just a military operation. It was to bring protection to Rahab. And this calls us to the attention of how God works on both ends of providence. Now I want you to turn over to the book of John, chapter number 4. Because there's some striking parallels between Rahab and John chapter 4. And let's go there. John chapter 4. Let's start in verse number 4. John 4, verse 4. This is Jesus, and he must what? What's that mean? Needs go. Right. He had something to do. He had a purpose. And the providence was leading him to go there to Samaria. Now, the problem with that statement is Samaria was one of those, I ain't going near you. You mixed. You're not Israelite. You're mixed. You're defiled. And they looked down upon the Samaritans. It wasn't the Samaritans' fault that they were mixed. That was Nebuchadnezzar and the Assyrian kings had decided to do it like that so that they couldn't rise up against them as a people. They would be diluted. So it wasn't their fault, but there was a bitterness between the two nations, the Samaritans and the Israelites. All right? So Jesus must needs go through Samaria. In other words, Jesus had a purpose in going. All right? And then he goes to that city which is called Sychar, down in verse 5. And he said, verse 6, now Jacob's well was there. Jesus, therefore, being wearied with his journey, sat thus on the well, and it was about the 6th hour. So that means what time? High noon. Okay? About the 6th hour. So what does that mean during the daytime? What's it going to be? Very hot and dusty and dry. So what do you need when it's hot and dusty and dry? Big old drink of cold water, ain't it? All right? Verse 7. There cometh a woman of Samaria to draw water. Jesus saith unto her, give me to drink. So, is this a chance meeting? No. Just as Rahab's meeting with those two spies wasn't a chance meeting, it was the providence of God that these two spies would go into the city and meet up with Rahab, and Rahab's heart had already been changed. And now here is an amazing parallel in the New Testament with Jesus going to Samaria to meet that one particular woman and to bring the gospel to some of the inhabitants of Samaria. So he meets her. Now remember this woman. Remember what Jesus said about her? She wasn't of high moral standards, was she? Let's go down to verse number 17. The woman answered and said, I have no husband. Jesus said unto her, thou hast well said, I have no husband. For thou hast had how many? 5 husbands, and he whom thou now hast is what? Okay? So she's had 5 previous husbands, and she's living with another man, as if a husband. All right? So she is not of high moral character, is she? All right? She has loose morals, and she has a reputation. Well, guess who's come to see her? The Lord. Remember over in John 16, Jesus told his disciples, John 10 verse 16 says, other sheep I have which are not of this fold, them also I must bring. He's talking about the Gentiles. Now Jesus goes down to Samaria, and he goes to Jacob's well, and he knows what time that woman's going to be there, because on a regular clockwork basis, the women of the house or the children would go and draw water from the well. Didn't have no running water, did they? They had no plumbing. Now some of the Roman city could have had plumbing, but didn't have no plumbing in Samaria. Okay? So they had to go and draw the water. How many of you remember that growing up around here, having to go draw water, right? That was a pain. We didn't like it, but it's something that had to be done every day. And Jesus was right there at the well at the right time and asked her for a cup of water, and she's kind of shocked. Hey, you being a Jew talking to me, a Samaritan? Boy, that's unheard of. So Jesus must needs be there at Samaria, at Jacob's well, at this time, for the sole purpose of seeing this woman saved. And then as a result of that, remember what the woman did. What'd she do? Right. She said in verse 29, come see a man which told me all things that I ever did. is not this who? The Christ. She knew about the Christ, didn't she? She'd had a personal experience with him and knew that he was the Christ. Now, verse 30, then they went out of the city and came unto him. In the meanwhile his disciples pray him, saying, Master, eat. But he said unto them, I have meat to eat that ye know not of. So you see, he received strength and encouragement from that encounter with this woman that had to be saved. She must needs be saved. So Christ here has come to the place at the right time, in the right way, and she's come to do business with this woman. And then look what happens. It says, let me find it here. Verse 40, so when the Samaritans were come unto him, they besought him that he would tarry with them, and he abode there 2 days. And look what happened. And many more believed because of his own word. You see that? All right. And then notice what else it said. And said unto the woman, now we believe, not because of thy saying, for we have heard him ourselves, and know that this is indeed the Christ, the Savior of the world. All right? So they didn't kind of really want to believe her, did they? Well, understandably so. But guess what? The same witness and the same effect happened with them when they heard Jesus. They got saved. But the Samaritan woman was the key to unlocking that city. Jesus must needs go there, and did. Just as those two spies must needs go there to save Rahab, so here is Jesus saving this woman at the well, the Samaritan woman at the well. So many of God's elect are called out from gross wickedness in their unconverted days, fornication, idolatry, thieves, drunkards, extortioners, all those things. God has called them out from those sins. Rahab was no different. God has called her out. The Samaritan woman is no different, and neither are we. You think about God's grace and mercy, how God loved us enough to save us, and you imagine what we looked like before God before we were saved. Think about how wicked we looked before God, how vile and corrupt our sins were that were upon us, and then how God wonderfully applied the blood of Christ to our hearts, saved us by his grace and mercy, sent Jesus to us, and here Jesus abides within us, and here soon we will abide with him in heaven. So you think of this beautiful parallel between the Samaritan woman and Rahab the harlot. You think about that parallel, and then we'll look at the next chapter, chapter 3 in Jeremiah, and we'll look at what starts to happen in this process of the Battle of Jericho. Before that takes place, you got to get Israel, remember, across the Jordan. Okay, because you can't fight a war long distance. You got to go. Now, we can fight long distance wars now, but back then you had to go because you had to shoot your bow and arrow, you had to throw your spear, you had to do all that kind of stuff up close and personal, didn't you? So they have to get across the river to begin their occupation of the land and to take charge and possession of the land that God had given them. So read ahead chapter 3, and we'll start with that next time, Lord willing. All right, we'll stop there.